All right, thank you, Leah. Um, I'm not wearing my glasses, so I'm trying to be brave here, Leah. So while you were talking, I was looking, trying to find people. It looks like I see Anna in Oakland, and I see Antoinette up in Pittsburgh, and I see Anna in Florida. There's some people I know. And I see Otis, my good friend Otis in Oakland, and I see Cheyenne. Hey, I haven't seen her in a while. Those are the faces that I can see. And I see Mitzi. Hey, Mitzi. I haven't seen Mitzi in a while. Awesome, awesome. And to everyone else who isn't on camera that I know, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Diana. Awesome, welcome everybody. So glad we got 82 souls here with us this morning. I'm happy to be here. Happy to share this short amount of time with us and hopefully elevate what we know about autism, not just what we know, but some strategies, some take homes, some things that we can do tomorrow with young children. And many of you on this call support adults who work with young children, or many of you I know work for the county, so you support adults. So we're going to give you some tools and some strategies and some resources that you could use tomorrow or Monday at work. And we're going to talk about those as we share this space in time today. All right. So there are two types of handouts. So Leah has probably already emailed you all, and you will get another email at the end with the evaluation. One handout is for those who like to take notes beside the slide. The other handout is just a big photo of every slide for folk like myself who don't like to take notes on that, but like to see all the words on the slide. So you'll be able to download both of them. And Leah will probably put them in the chat. So she just put the link in the chat for those who are here. If you click on that link will take you to the slide deck and lots of handouts that we're going to be talking about today for you to take back to your work with young children and their families, or your work supporting adults who support children and families, because I know we have an array of people across the spectrum and continuum with us today. All right, let's jump right in. All right, so I'm Shawn Bryant. I'm just going to be your facilitator on this learning journey today. What you see on the screen is just a little bit about me, what I find important or my learning lifts in these 30 years that I've been in early childhood and elementary education. And I continue to do this work in terms of professional development through consulting, coaching, and training, because I believe and I hope that by supporting adults who care and work with young children in different settings, places, and spaces, that parallel process, that if we afford them the right resourcing, then they can afford children opportunities from the inside out to become positive, productive citizens. And to me, that is the core of the work of early childhood. Not this notion of school readiness, but how do we become positive citizens? All right, clicker's not working here. And of course, to stay, with me on social media, YesToECE is where you can connect with me on all social media platforms. Look forward to seeing you there. Have some exciting stuff coming up. I'm working with some young people who are social media mavericks, and they're helping my old self to modernize how I use social media. In this virtual learning process, we're going to do three things. We're going to raise awareness about autism in young children. We're going to learn some strategies. And some of them you're going to practice with me while we're doing it, but they're all takeaways that you can use in your work immediately. So I advise you to grab a paper and pen, pencil, marker, crayon, dry erase, whatever works best for you. We do know, based on neuroscience, that when we do this with the paper and pencil, it actually connects to our brain in a much stronger way than if we do this, even though I love doing this. So I just want to encourage you all, if you can, to do this in your note-taking to strengthen your learning. And as always, I've created those community agreements for us. We want you to speak up and out, use your role and responsibility. But think of these strategies as being open to new ways of knowing. Some of these things may be familiar to you. Many of these practices that we're going to share, these strategies, while they're really effective for children across the autism spectrum, they're actually effective for all young learners in early learning settings. So think of it in that context also, of all children, but then spotlighting children on the continuum, because these strategies have been proven through evidence-based to work really well for them. All right. And of course, we're using the chat box to stay focused and engaged on the topic and to do resource sharing. And you can put your questions here if you want to, or you're welcome to unmute and say, hey, Shawn, I have a question or I have a comment along the way, bringing your voice to the session. We know we start all sessions with this mirror that we look in, this reminder to parents and caregivers that when they look in the mirror, the core theme for adults is that if we're working with children on the autism spectrum, we need to be able to tell ourselves that we're enough. So we need to be able to help them know that they're enough in terms of their resourcing, because too often people say, oh, this child or these children are in my class on the spectrum, and I don't have what it takes to support them. And what I find is when adults change that narrative, they realize that they do have what it takes to not just support them, but to engage with them so that they can learn and thrive in the context and conditions of all early learning settings. I'm reminded of a good colleague and teacher down in Gilroy, Esther Lentz, about, I'm going to say it was probably 6 years ago now. I was down there with her, and I came one day and she said, I'm leaving. And I said, where you going? She says, I'm packing my bags and I'm moving back to Peru. I said, wait a minute, what happened? You're going back to Peru? She said, yeah, my daughter's in Berkeley. She's doing well. You know, my son has transitioned. I told my husband he can come if he wants, or he can stay here. I said, Esther, calm down. You've never been this way. I said, what's going on? She said, there are 3 children in my class who are all on the spectrum. I said, really? I said, come on, let's sit down and let's talk about it. So as we began to talk about it, I realized that she knew a great deal about them. And in her talking about those 3 little boys, she forgot that she was talking about their capacities and their strengths. And mainly, she was talking about large group time, circle time, and how that was difficult for them. So we resourced. What are you 3 doing now? Esther, what are you, Marie, and Linda doing? What would you like to happen? And what could we change around what you're offering them? All I offered up was a 5-minute chat around what we know about brain science, around young children need to move before they sit still. It's how the brain actually develops and works. But too much of our systems, our old systems, tell children, sit still and I might let you move. And Esther, said, you know what? We're going to try. Before we have circle time, I'm going to let them 3 go outside in the yard. I said, okay. I came back for my next visit thinking, all right, Esther, so you're still leaving? Because if you're leaving, I want a ticket because I'm going to come visit you in Peru. I want to come to Peru. And she says, oh, I'm not going anywhere. I said, oh, what happened? She said, look. And I looked, and half of her class was outside. She said, we changed our whole schedule. And at 9 o'clock, instead of having circle, we let them 3 go, and then 2 more asked. And then we just decided, let's actually have outdoor time from 9 to 10 instead of from 10 to 11. She said, this changed the whole way my classroom kind of moves and functions. By servicing them 3, she changed the whole way. Climate of her classroom for all the children by thinking about those children on the autism spectrum. So I share that story as an opening around this notion that we are enough and that all young children can learn. So it's the second core theme here is for us to help adults recognize that every child has their own way of learning, specifically children on the autism spectrum. And that as adults, the support, those daily supports can be successful the way Esther's was if we identify what it is we need to change and shift and do differently to support those children, but all children. So just an overview of our short time together, because we've had to pick and choose what we were going to share, what we weren't going to share. There's always more and more and more that we can share. We're going to give a general overview of autism. I will admit, originally I had left this out, and a colleague of mine, looked through the presentation last night and was like, Shawn, you can't skip that part. You can't just jump in. There are always people who show up and this is their first time, or they're new and they don't have a lot of background knowledge. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about the 3 universal traits, and then we're going to jump into the strategies during our short time together. And of course, we're recording this. So if you miss anything, you can always go to the First 5 Alameda County YouTube page. Leah usually has these videos up within 48 hours with the handouts and the resources, so you can share it with your colleagues if it's something you want them to hear and know about. So we start by basically defining what is autism. What is autism? So I'll give you all, 30 seconds to read this sentence. So this notion of it being developmental means that if we think of the developmental continuum that all children, atypically developing children and typically developing children go through, that means we can do some things along that continuum to teach, model, and practice for our young children who are along that continuum or that spectrum. And then there are different categories along that spectrum. So one that I'm spotlighting today is, what they typically say it's at the top or the far end of the spectrum, Asperger's. These children typically present in a variety of ways. They socialize, they do well academically, and oftentimes they may, like my godmother's daughter, she didn't get diagnosed until she was almost 30. She was over 25 when she got diagnosed. But some of the things that we can pay attention to is this notion of empathy, this empathetic sense. These children oftentimes, not always, oftentimes, because remember, it's not a single blanket for any child, but oftentimes when we look for shared behaviors, we notice a lack of empathetic sense. They tend to be one-sided, or some people would say egocentric. It's not really egocentric, they just have a difficult time because we have to teach them and through practice, interacting and seeing someone else's perspective. They can sometimes get really immersed in their own ideas, their own routines and what's important to them, and develop what we sometimes call maladaptive behaviors that typically developing children may not develop. So it's really important that we talk about what autism is not. So in the longer session, we would have talked about myths, but I'm just going to give you some on this that you see on the screen here. And I think the most important one is that it's not contagious, it's not curable, and it is not the parent's fault. I've seen some things where they said, oh, if the mother eats this, or if the mother does this, or if the father's this age, literally blaming parents. And we don't have that science that says any of those things are true. The one thing that we do know is that lots of the diagnoses typically is in male-born children. And we know that female-born children are underdiagnosed. So what we mean by that is that female-born children actually can be on the spectrum, but because of how we socialize children based on gender. Yeah, Renuko, the slide, that link, maybe she just joined Leah. Leah put the link to all the slides. She just put it in the handout. I mean, in the chat. What we do know is that female-born children are underdiagnosed, and that oftentimes they grow past adolescence into early adulthood before they actually receive a diagnosis or people start asking questions and they get the needed support and help. So we do know we need to focus on not just externalizing behaviors, which is what we often see, but those internalizing behaviors, the children who don't cause ruckus, but seem to, step to a different beat sometimes. And we oftentimes look over those children and go to the children who are kind of calling attention to themselves more. And we know that that is some of the current research around who's diagnosed and who isn't. So this next slide is a lovely quote that I just love. I'm going to read it to you. I found it some time ago. So it says, autism imposes no inherent limits on children. I'll say it again. Autism imposes no inherent limits on children, but we as adults often do. Through our failure to adapt our teaching, caregiving, to the different manner in which our children with autism process information, experiences their physical environment, and relates to others. So I'm encouraged by this quote because it really says, children on the spectrum can learn. They will learn if we reframe and change how we see them and how we understand our role and responsibility. So throughout the presentation, I'm going to just spotlight some of the handouts in the handout. No, Jeanette, it is not hereditary. Nope, that's a myth. That is a myth. So this first handout that's in your handout link is by Clarissa Willis, who is the author of a book which many of these strategies come from. But I wanted you to pay attention to this article also. If you support adults, this may be a great short article to give them to say read, and the next time I come back, we'll go over it together so that you're not saying here are these strategies, but you're actually going through it together and talking about it in this way that's resourceful for them to see that, oh, I can reach out and do some things differently for a child or children in my classroom. So when you get an opportunity, please take a look at that handout. It's a great resource for early childhood educators. Then we know that some children on the spectrum have this notion of what they call difficulty functioning around how they perceive the world around them, their arousal systems, how they take in and hold information, and that their motor functioning is sometimes impaired, and that they oftentimes, as they're developing, their repertoire of skills is not the same as their typically developing peers. I'm going through this section quick so that we can get to the strategies, because that's the bulk of this training. This one wasn't designed to take that deep dive into all of these aspects. We find that adults oftentimes have concerns around problem behaviors that children on the spectrum may demonstrate, how it may change and alter that classroom dynamic. Esther was an example of that. Do they have the right training and knowledge and skill or ability? I like to say, do they have the right will? Do they have the right will? And can they make a difference? Can they make a difference? So hopefully, through this notion of these strategies that should be familiar to most skilled early childhood and caregivers, they'll realize that, oh, these are things that are within my grasp and within my reach that I can do something about. So we're going to quickly go over what they call universal traits of social impairments, communication difficulties, and this notion of how children get stuck in behaviors as those big three universal traits. And you can Google autism, you can go to the CDC's website and lots of other great online places that are reputable, that are constantly updating information if you want to take that kind of academic deeper dive. But again, that isn't the focus of today. Today is for us to, get some practical strategies that we can take back. So this notion of social interaction, and remember, this is not all, this is some, but we find these behaviors typically show up in many children. So when we think of social interaction, we know that children with autism spectrum disorder may not make the same level of eye contact that their children who are typically developing peers may make. They may just want to be alone. My godson Elijah was like that. He pretty much, during his preschool years, didn't want play partners. He wanted to play alone most of the time. But when he got home, he really wanted to play with his older brother. So it wasn't always, it was at school. He wanted to play alone, but at home, he wanted to play with his older brother. They sometimes may have trouble understanding other people's feelings or talking about their own feelings, which is why we have to teach these things. And those are going to be some of the strategies that we cover. I'm not going to read to you what's on the screen because this is in the slide. And this notion of social communication, they may not always understand gestures like waving goodbye or saying hello. These are things that we have to teach. How their voices might sound may appear flat, and it may seem that they cannot control how loudly or softly they talk. Again, these are things that we can teach. In terms of physical proximity, sometimes they stand too close and invade people's space. These are things that we can teach them. They can be taught these things. And many teachers that I've worked with over the years don't use the term. The term is called scripting, but they'll say that this kid is repeating things over and over and over. The scripting is things that they've heard on TV or on social media or in those types of settings. It makes sense to them, so they repeat it. Or if you ask them questions, how they're communicating shows up differently. So I'll give you an example. So the teacher had asked one little girl if she wanted pizza. And the little girl's response was triangles and circles, triangles and circles. The teacher was like, I'm asking you if you want pizza. And you could hear the frustration in her voice. So after a bunch of back and forth, we realized later during conversation that what she was describing was the shape of the pizza and the meat on the pizza. That language piece, which is why we have to do some things to teach young children how to communicate effectively. But it takes us to take a step back, think about it, not get frustrated, and say, what's my entry point here? And the notion of how clear is our language? How clear is our language when we're communicating with children so that we're not confusing them when we're communicating. And then this third one, which is oftentimes big for people around social behaviors, through routines and repetitions, how children are negotiating space with their peers in the outside world, and what are the expectations for them? What are the expectations? Or what do we like to call, what's the null curriculum? Not the academic part, but the part that other children pick up on. That, you know, when Miss Ashley sits down in the seat, we all know that that means it's time for us to sit. But Miss Ashley never tells us we need to sit, but the other children pick up on that. These are pieces that we have to teach and be explicit about for young children. All right, we're almost there. So there are also benefits that we like to spotlight that children get. So Shanice said, my son scripts all the time. Thank you, Shanice. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. To children, in terms of these inclusive environments, it creates this greater sense of awareness for all children, for the typically developing children, around children who are atypical. In this sense, we're talking about children on the autism spectrum, and not othering them, but helping them to belong. Across that developmental continuum, the developmental benefits are wide for all children. The children who are helping and the children who are being helped, it supports their self-confidence. In this notion of academic progress, because I'm supporting and teaching and modeling, that's directly connected to what I learn and what I do in this global sense of creating a caring environment. Then we looked at some predictors of behaviors. So what you see on the screen, these are some things that we need to watch for, because if we see these things beginning to happen, we can intervene and do some things different before it escalates. So some colleagues of mine, they often say, you know, there's this continuum, there's this curve, in that when children are here, when we see these things, this restlessness, this pause, this distractibility, or the louder voice, we intervene then. What we often do as adults, as it escalates and the children get to the top, then we want to do something. It's too late then. So now we need to wait for them to come back. But if we notice these things and we intervene early, we can prevent them from what? Escalating. So that's part of our teaching. I like to tell early childhood professionals that observation is your #1 teaching strategy. I want to encourage you all to write that down. That's the Montessorian in me. Observation is your #1 teaching strategy. So most books you'll read will tell you it's scaffolding, like old higher order scaffolding. But if you observe well, you're going to parent well. If you observe well, you're going to caregive well. If you observe well, you're going to teach well, because the observation is actually what needs to happen. It's going to provide for you what needs to happen if you develop your observation skills well. So I'll say that one last time. Observation is your #1 teaching strategy. And we don't see it as a teaching strategy. We think of it as the means to an end, but it is a teaching strategy if we learn how to do it well. That's right, Jamie. Jamie said, watch the cues. And that's exactly what it's going to help you do. Get those cues to do it effectively, definitely. Thank you, Jamie. So now we're going to play, Leah, this is that slide that I couldn't get. So I couldn't get this slide to act right, but you're going to get the gist of the activity. It's a real short activity. So we just went over 3 universal traits. I'm going to give you some short sentences. Then I just want you to put in the chat which one you think it is, if it's communication, if it's social, or if it's behavior. But I think 2 of them, the answer is going to pop up with it. So forgive me. Joshua loves dogs. In the writing center, that should say Joshua. Joshua writes invented spelling about dogs every day. Joshua loves dogs. In the writing center, Joshua writes invented spelling about dogs every day. Is this social? Is it behavior? Or is this communication when we think of those traits that we just learned about? Just put it in the chat. There's no right or wrong here. Shayon says behavior. We see communication. All right, let's see. Shayon, you were spot on. It is behavior. It is behavior. Remember, we've got to practice these things to get more effective at them. At home, Aviana has a favorite cartoon show and will have a tantrum if the channel is changed or she is interrupted while watching the cartoon. When Aviana is greeted, she responds with dialogue from the cartoon show. Is this social, communication, or behavior? Jamie says communication. Renuko says communication. I see communication from Rachel and Cheryl, communication from Erica. Looks like we're on a roll with Liz. Uh-oh. It is communication. Quick learners, quick learners. This is a smart group, Anna. I think the 3rd one, the answer is going to pop up with it. Malik drops his lunch on the floor. Jose laughs when the orange rolls. This is social. And the 4th one, Leah, we could not get this slide. Leah and I worked hard to get this slide to work right. And as you can see, those last 2, it went out the door. During free play, Fernando stacks blocks in the tower over and over. He pushes peers away when they ask to play. This is social. This is social. Thank you for playing along. We're going to fix that slide, Leah. And this notion of how do we build belonging communities? It's important for us to talk about differences with young children, not avoid them, not this notion of we don't want children to experience any discomfort. Because here's what we know about discomfort. I see your question, Antoinette. Here's what we know about discomfort. It's actually a good thing and it builds resilience. So if we think of the 3 stress states, that toxic or severe stress, which is the most damaging, tolerable stress, like breaking a leg, a loved one dies, our stress level goes up and then it comes down. Or this notion of what Jack Shonkoff in the Center for the Developing Child at Harvard call positive stress. I call positive stress useful stress. And I call it useful stress because it's useful in the term that positive stress builds the resiliency that we often talk about. All right. So in the absence of that discomfort to build the resiliency, we leave ourselves open. We do. So talking about these differences that may seem uncomfortable to teachers, adults, and children actually has a great benefit for us. We've got to use language that is inclusive. I'm using language in this slide, this language of belonging, becoming, and being. What does this look like in practice? What does this look like in parenting and caregiving? We've got to intervene and not be silent bystanders when children are being teased or bullied, right? I do monthly mind in the making training of trainers for the National Head Start Association. And in one of these scripts at the end, one of the scenarios is about typically developing and atypically developing children. And the one child who's atypically developing, the other children are cheating that child. And then the folks every month when they get to that one, they have to come up with how they're going to respond using this framework. But almost each and every time they avoid talking about the differences and that the children are cheating the atypically developing child because they know something's different. Shawn's a little bit different and we all pick up on it, but nobody's talking about it, which is why we're cheating Shawn when we play the math game. So this notion of intervening and talking about differences becomes strategy, all right? Then we've got the model ways to support children with autism spectrum disorder, because not all peer models are positive, specifically for children with disabilities. I'll say it again, not all peer models are positive. My godson, who is now 10, he was in Oakland Head Start. I happened to be the coach at his site. I don't know how it happened. I didn't pick it. I promise you. I just showed up and was like, oh that's my godson. And of course I told the teachers after a while, because I didn't want them to think, he didn't tell us that was his godson. And they would have never picked up on it because most people don't think, oh, his godson's a little Asian boy in the classroom, not one of the little Black kids. But this notion of he picked the one kid in the classroom who I personally would have wanted him not to pick as his model. He did. He picked the child with the most challenging behaviors, the child who had IEP that was thick, the child that was receiving lots of support services. And this is the kid he wanted to follow. And my godson only had an IEP for speech in terms of expressive language to get support in that area. So as the adult, we've got to decide and know that not all models are what some children on the spectrum need. And then we've got to encourage all the children to participate. And we're going to see some short videos of some real teachers helping children to participate in strategy in real ways. Fingers crossed if we can get the video to play, because again, technology sometimes is not my friend. Oh, Antoinette asked a question of us. Why was the last one social? So during free play, Fernando stacks blocks in the tower over and over. He pushes peers away when they ask to play. He pushes peers away when they ask to play. I want one of our participants, there's 106 people on this call, Antoinette. So I wonder if somebody else will mind unmuting and exploring why this one is social and not communication or behavior. Although sometimes, guess what? They can be two things, not just one. They can.
I'll give it a try.
Thanks, Shawnice.
I have a son, he's 8. His name is Taj, diagnosed at 2. It's social to me because a lot of the times, in my experience, they have trouble. It's like communication and social. They have trouble communicating and being social with kids their age or kids they're not used to. So to want to play, even if in their mind they do, it's hard to. So they don't want to interact with them, or they maybe feel uncomfortable um, talking if they really want to interact. So sometimes they parallel play. They sit side by side, don't say nothing to each other, but they stack blocks together. I've seen that. I've seen, him playing by himself and kind of looking at the other kids play and like mimicking what they're doing, but still can't quite say, "Hey, I want to play too." Back then, now he can do that, but
Mhm.
it takes some training and, routine and, redirecting to get used to that. So they're very much communication and social at that last one for me.
Mhm. Thank you. Was that helpful, Internet?
Yes, but when I'm looking at the scenario, I said,
Mhm.
okay, the first part was he was stacking the blocks, making the tower. Okay, so is that the social part, or was the push
Well,
peers away the social part? So that's
that was he used his body to communicate. But when they asked to play, that's a peer entry skill that we have to teach, that they asked to play. Instead of him saying, "No, I want to play alone," he pushed them away. So socially, it was too much to say, "Sure, there are more blocks. You can build with me. I'm trying to build a tower." All those kind of mature play pieces that we need to observe and watch for, because as the adult, we could intervene and support the children to ask more questions and for him to possibly, Fernando, to be receptive of them playing with him. And oftentimes that requires us to be a part of the play, to do what I call, that floor time piece, to get down on the floor in the block area and spend time there modeling and being a container, the whole Fernando and the peers who are saying, "You're doing something we want to do." Where oftentimes children on the spectrum are rejected. They're saying, "You're doing something that we are interested in." So this social skill that we want Fernando to have that he's rejecting, which is why it's social, because he used some communication. It wasn't the best, but he used communication. What he's not having space for is the social piece of them playing with him. Yeah. Great question, Antoinette. Great question. Thank you, Shanice. Thank you. And then as we move forward we have 2 more slides and we're going to jump into strategies. We've got to understand family roles, that families are protectors. So it's one thing that we never want to tell families when they drop their child off and they're nervous, they're anxious, they're saying, this is their first, group care setting. I've been at home, or they've been with their grandma or their nan. And what we often say is, "Shawn will have a good day." That's a lie. We can't never promise that. And that's what most teachers, because it's what we want, but it's actually not true. So when we think of families as protectors, we need to be open to just hearing what is it that they're bringing and what is their concerns, and making no promises at all, because making promises could actually cause them some level of trauma. And then this notion is family as evaluator. They're evaluating their child in the context of group care. They're evaluating their child in the context of, are you able to meet what they think is their emerging need, their new need, and that they may feel like they're being ignored, they don't have the right support. We need to hear that and let them decide what do they think is best for their child, while at the same time helping them understand group care is different than having the babysitter home with your child. And not being frustrated with them saying we're not a babysitter, but to understand the dynamic of what they're bringing as a parent, as a family that may be still grieving, My godmother's daughter is 31. Guess what? Her mama, who is almost 70, is still grieving that her child is on the spectrum. Years later, she's still grieving. You hear it in her conversations sometimes and where she goes, because it has no end and it has no deadline for people. So when families are evaluating where their child or children are, we've got to recognize that and accept it. Then we've got to understand the role that the family as this co-teacher, that they're teaching some things and they may have some goals for their child or children that we may not have in the play group, we may not have at our family childcare, we may not have at our state funded or Head Start or early Head Start program. It's our role to come together and hear what those things are and figure out a way to come to agreement. In coming to agreement, a wise African scholar said, coming to this notion that we're going to agree to disagree is wrong and that we need to move away from that. It changed my life when I heard it. And so I stopped saying it to people. I stopped saying, Anna, we're going to agree to disagree. Nope, what he's saying is we've got to keep talking about this until it works. We've got to stay in the mess of it until it works, which is a new way of seeing it and doing the work. Because I know many of you are like me where we've said, let's just agree to disagree, and we both leave sometimes worse than the way we showed up, right? But this notion of staying in it and working through it, to be in curious conversation around what this parent or family believes is best for their child or children, which isn't always, that's not the best thing. True story. So on my father's side, I'm the eldest grandchild. So the youngest grandchild, my first cousin Aaliyah and her husband, Nick, and their 3 children, 4, 2, and 3 months, for the last 2 weeks have had to live with me because they had an electrical fire in their house. So I love having them there because I love my little cousins and, you know, they keep me young, but they do some things that challenge me. You know, they don't spank or beat their children, but when the children do things that they don't like, they tell them to go stand in the corner. It's their timeout. And it caught me off guard. We were on the sofa and I'm thinking, stand in the corner. He's not, in my mind, I'm thinking he's not learning anything. But I'm not the parent, but we're in my house. It was a struggle, y'all. It was a struggle. I had to get up and get a glass of Cabernet to calm me down. I did, because I wanted to say, what are we doing? This don't work. But this notion of the parent as the teacher isn't about me saying, I know some other things that will work. They were going to shut that down. So I had to let it happen and wait for it to organically come back up. Guess what she said to me 3 days after? You know, we're not going to beat them because we don't think that that does anything. But what do you think else we could do other than standing in the corner? And I was thinking, there has to be a God. 3 days later, she's asking me, we're at the dining room table, and she's asking me now for what? Strategies or other things. And I didn't jump in saying, well, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to do. Guess what I said? Why don't you think standing in the corner works? I had to hear her rationale around why she was using it, both of them, but not thinking it worked, and was curious about what I thought. This is that family as co-teacher, that we come to this agreement through multiple conversations. I could go on and on and on and on and on, but you all get it. You all get it. Otis said family, past, parents, and classes. Thank you, Otis. Right. I thought about that too, but I was struggling, like, how do I bring this up? Because if I say, you know, you two should go to parenting classes, then I'm saying, I don't think you're very effective at what you're doing, and then feel criticized and shut down. And that's not what I want to convey. It's the same as being in the work with them. There's a second handout that is an awesome handout. It's multiple pages. It got produced a few years ago. It's tips for early care and child care providers, specifically created for children on the spectrum. If you choose nothing else to look at, I highly, highly recommend that this is the handout that you look at. If you're a coach, you want to add this to your coaching resource. If you're an education specialist or manager, you definitely want to add this to not just as the handout, but how you train and educate your teachers, because it's really all in this handout here. It's a rich resource that you could actually take and turn it into its own training. So definitely take a look at this handout in the handout resources. All right, now let's jump into these 3 traits and some strategies for working with young children. So we're going to start with social interaction, then we're going to move the social communication, then we're going to move the social behavior and end strong there. All right, fingers crossed all the videos play, because we have a few videos that we're hoping play and play well. If not, afterwards, Leah and I, because Leah's a great thinker, will think of something in a way to get you to view these practices. So let's start with social interaction and some strategies. So this strategy of teaching children, how do I help? This is really for their peers, because all children can be taught how to, like we talked earlier about play entry skills that we often don't teach children. They can be taught how to approach their peers who need assistance, or if they want to offer assistance. This is something that we have to teach, because not all children show up and know how to do it. And when we don't teach these things, we misunderstand them richly around these skills. We want to use classroom situations that are real to children and that are relevant to their developing needs as a community of learners. Then we're going to help them, not tell them, identify ways that they could help, right? You could chart their answers, acknowledge who's being helpful. I know CSEPL Teaching Pyramid uses what they call super friend, and they do this. Children who are helpful to other friends, the teachers notice it, and then they'll say, today I saw Jamie being a super friend. When Andrea was in the bathroom and she couldn't reach the tissue, Jamie reached up and helped her get the tissue. She was a super friend. These are ways that we help typically developing children support atypically developing children. So they see it as, I do this for what? Everybody that's here. This is a great, great strategy to teach and introduce early and often. So as we continue around this notion of social interaction, teaching children, my name is. This is how they need to meet someone. I wish I had known this earlier with my godson Elijah. He desperately, desperately needed this kind of skill around introducing and meeting people. So each one of these slides are going to detail what you can do. I'm going to walk up to Rupert and I'm going to greet him. I'm going to stand arm lengths away so that they see my proximity. I'm going to smile and I'm going to say, hi, my name is Shawn. And I'm going to wait. Then I'm going to say, I like to build blocks in the block area. Do you like to build blocks in the block area? Then I'm going to wait. If I get a response or no response, I might say, bye. Then I'm going to wait and I'm going to walk away. Now, to you, this may seem just not normal or not how you teach children, but when we consider children on the spectrum, this is that needed gap that we often leap over because the other children are picking up on the nuances and watching and learning, and children on the spectrum need us to slow down and fill in that piece that they're not getting. So something as simple as introducing oneself and saying what their name is an important skill for young children, all right? The second strategy around social interaction is what we call talk to me. So I've written this script here. This is just like a social story for a conversation. I might say, I want to talk to Pam. I will walk up to Pam. I will say hi. I will wait for Pam to say hi. I will look at Pam and say, what are you doing? I will wait for Pam to talk. I will say, that sounds fun. I will wait for her to talk. I will look at her. I will say bye. For those who know, social stories and scripted stories, one is copyrighted, so people can't use it. But this notion of this social story that usually comes with pictures and words of the child we're trying to teach. This is just one example of talk to me as a strategy around this notion of social interaction, social interaction. One that's probably familiar to most of you is what we call telephone talk. So we tell the children, we may do this with a small group. We're gonna say, we're gonna play a game. And in this game, we're gonna talk on the telephone. Yeah, we can, you're gonna use your daddy's cell phone, you can use your daddy's cell phone. Oh, your grandma doesn't let you use her cell phone? Yeah, your grandma's smart. They're gonna do some of that. It may be the 4 children, very familiar with cell phones. Well, I have some phones right here. So let's pretend these phones work, but they really don't work. So if I called you the way your dad's phone was, you wouldn't hear me, but we're gonna pretend we hear each other on the phone. So I'm going to say something to you. And when I say something to you, I need you to do what it is I say. So I'm going to say, Rosa, touch your nose. Jack, pull your ear. I'm going to wait. The wait is always important. And I'm going to see if they do it. Then I'm going to say, if they do it, I'm going to say, Otis, I need you to stand up and turn around in the circle. Then after they do it and they're having fun, because this is a game, I'm going to say, now I need you all to tell me what to do. I need you to tell me what to do on the telephone. Very simple, but very, very important for young children on the spectrum to have these exchanges with the teacher guiding them. Like I said, this could be one-on-one, or this could be a small group. This could be you using your assessment data, your observation data, grouping, some more skilled children or players with some less skilled peers, so that they're learning from each other and not just from us, which is crucial to effective small groups. So Virginia said, watch, wait, listen is important for children and teachers. That's right. Not to jump in, but what I was guilty of when I was a self-contained teacher, and some of you probably are laughing, I talked too much. It was always on my evaluation. They would say, Shawn, the children love you, but you said 5 things and didn't come up for air before they could even respond to the first one. And I realized that, so that slowing down process for me was part of my lift as the adult. And oftentimes it was my own excitement that would lead the way. So this next strategy we call what to do, what to do. And this is by Clarissa Willis. She's the author of that first handout that we showed. We want to read this several times before, and then we're going to, when children get used to it, then we're going to give them some problems to solve. So, So we say, I go to school almost every day. Sometimes things get in my way. That should be get. Second error, Leah, I get mad and want to fight, but I know that is not right. So I need some help from you. Can you tell me what to do? 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 Then we pose some what? Situations for problem solving. We say, can you tell me what to do? Someone is playing with your favorite toy at school. What do you do? And of course, that wait time, we're giving children an opportunity to think. You're at school and it's center time. Your favorite center is full. You love going to the art center, but there are 3 people there, so you can't go there. What do you do? Can you tell me what to do? Outside, friends are playing the game. You want to join the game. Can you tell me what to do? Can you tell me what to do? You keep going back to this. Helen, you keep unmuting and we keep hearing the children in the background. Thank you. We may do the same thing with asking children a problem around wanting to share or take turns, or not wanting to share or not wanting to take turns. Can you tell me what to do? Can you tell me what to do? This is very, very important. Very, very. I've seen children go into full-blown tantrums because a child said, I don't want to share. And the other child said, but you have to share. We always have to share. I was thinking, where'd they learn this from? us as adults. Someone told her you have to share. So she integrated it as what? A core value, that not sharing was never what? A possibility. Someone told that other kid, you don't always have to share. Guess what? Those are probably my kids. You don't have to share. Those are my kids. Those are my kids. Nope, you don't always have to. You don't always have to. It's a really great life skill to be able to say no. How many of you as adults struggle with telling people no? Because it was never modeled for you as a child. It's this same thing, problem solving early and modeling it for young children. All right, let's move to the next strategy, which is a peer buddy. So fingers crossed, Leah, this video, fingers crossed this video plays. If it doesn't, I'll do some front loading. So this is Miss Doreen Revisa. She's a preschool teacher down in San Jose, California. And her children are actually transitioning from inside to outside. And she uses peer buddies. And the peer buddy is really designed in two reasons. What you all don't know, there are two children in this clip that are on the spectrum. And guess what? You can't figure out who they are. This is what I love about it. You even if you tried, you would not be able to figure out who it is. But when I talked to her about this, she said, well, I started doing this, Shawn, because I wanted to break up children who were in cliques. She said, every day the same kid would want to hold their friend's hand. And she said, we had a conversation that, you know, we're going to meet some other people, not just the people you play with every day who are in this class. So every single day when they transition outside, she calls names, and that person whose name she calls, which is what you're going to see in the clip, has to get up and pick somebody, and they just walk outside. The implicit message here is everybody has two roles that they're always playing. Miss Revisa calls my name, and then guess what? I can call Denisha's name. So I got picked, and then Denisha gets picked by her peer. Every day it's a different person. So we all have this notion of our names are being called by the teacher and each other. And we have this buddy. Here's the other piece she added. When you walk outside with them, talk to them about something. So in the clip, you see me turn to them. They're holding each other's hands the way 4-year-olds do, and they're walking outside. So if you're that child on the spectrum, guess what's happening to you that oftentimes doesn't happen? Someone may say, what's your favorite toy? What did you play with today? They're asking you this question and having that social interaction. So enough of me. Fingers crossed that we get to see Miss Revisa at work. Her grandson's an actual professional football player. I had to go through 3 months of coaching her before she stopped talking about him. I want to say, thank you, but I'm not here for that, Miss Revisa. But you know, when you listen in that coaching meeting, she got past it and was able to then talk about the work, but she needed me to hear about her grandson. And I knew it was largely, she looked at me and said, he must play football. Look at those wide shoulders. He must play football. I knew that's what it was. Let's
see. Naya, can you choose a friend? I like the way you sat quietly at the circle. That was showing respect. And Sophia, can you choose somebody to line up? Adriana's showing respect. She's raising her hand.
Jackets on, right?
Angeline, Kendra's showing respect. Bella's showing respect.
Are you choosing a friend? I'm choosing Pete.
You're raising your hand, Alan. Thank you, Alan. Can you choose a friend? I'm choosing Zulema and Eduardo. We're going to get ready to go outside.
Yeah. I played that game before.
I have a friend over here.
Where's the leader?
Okay, Alan, choose a friend.
You can run through your time machine. No time machine.
I see how you're walking.
Where are we going to the park? Different. I choose Allison.
You choose Allison? And what happened? Allison's already lined up. What are we going to do? Stephanie, can you come back over here, please?
Hey, what is this here? Come on! She doesn't look that happy. She doesn't look
Brian, can you get with Alex and we'll all go together? Sure. All right, let's go.
So this next strategy is what we call 3 breaths away, 3 breaths away. So we know that this notion of being able to calm down is important for young children. And we know that deep breathing as a technique, we always hear about it. People say, take a deep breath, but they never really tell us why. That what's happening for adults, internet gremlins, right? What's happening for adults and what's happening for children. So when we breathe in, a couple of things happen. When we take that breath in, we give fresh oxygen to our bloodstream and we send fresh oxygen to our brain. That helps us to recalibrate. We call it calming down, or this notion of recalibrating. And then we've got to help children actually learn how to take 3 breaths. So this strategy is that explicit teaching, not saying breathe, which is so involuntary, but actually helping young children. And this is what I find with this breathing strategy. When we have to teach it to children, guess who we're actually teaching it to again? Ourselves. Because most of us don't do a really good job of that. So we tell children saying, we're going to show you something to do when we're upset or if we need to calm down, right? And that word upset is a feeling word to young children. So you may want them to emote and use and say, upset isn't a feeling word. But when they say they're upset, that's their stress word. We need to accept it as being developmentally appropriate and not try to replace it with another word. I've seen lots of parents and caregivers do that, trying to get the child to change the word that they offered up. And then it spiraled out of control. So we're going to tell them, we want to show them something that they can do when they're upset. We're going to say it involves breathing. Watch me breathe. I'm going to put my hands on my chest and you're going to see my chest move. I took a deep breath. When I take that deep breath, you see my chest move. I'm going to do it again. And this time, you can put your hand on your chest if you want. You don't have to. I want you to breathe with me. We're going to take a deep breath, but this time we're going to hold it and see how long we can blow all the breath out. On 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. We've got to breathe in through our nose. We're going to push it out. We're going to blow it out through our mouth. All right? So breathe with me. I encourage you on the call to breathe with me. Come on, Anna, breathe with me. Come on, Andrea, breathe with me. Come on, Mercedes, breathe with me. Come on, Pam, breathe with me. We're going to keep practicing that. Taking a deep breath. We hold it and we blow all the air out. This isn't a strategy that we have to teach. And remember, most of these strategies, if not all of them, not just work for children on the spectrum, but all the children in your classroom community. Practical strategies that you can use tomorrow. So this next handout, Teaching Preschoolers with Autism, Interventions to Ensure Access, Participation, and Support. It's just another, when I was reading, I felt like this was a worthy article. It was early childhood centered, published in the EHS-CCP's Journal of Young Children. Another one that you coaches and specialists and managers on the call can take a look at and determine how you want to share it with your staff, your teachers, your early educators, your Head Start folk, who oftentimes are asking for support in terms of supporting children on the spectrum. So the next universal trait we're going to look at is social communication. Social communication. We're going to look at some strategies for social communication. One that's very familiar, but we overlook. This notion of a picture schedule. Most people in the field call it a visual schedule. But picture schedule, children can use at school and at home. My godson, he needed a picture schedule of how to wake up in the morning, get up, go to the bathroom, brush his teeth, wash his face, go back into his bedroom, get dressed, and then go downstairs and eat breakfast. He needed that. And then it was, after you ate breakfast, put your bowl in the sink. He needed that script of moving those things that were on his door. And he loved it. At first, his parents rejected it. And then it was go sit on the bench and put your shoes on, because they had this little bench that him and his sister would sit on by the door. But he needed that picture schedule. And what they saw was when they started using the picture schedule, guess what began to happen? Their mornings completely changed. They used to have really chaotic mornings that I didn't believe. And this is someone who's not on the spectrum, but they said, you know, Jonathan and Tiffany said, just come spend the night. Just come spend the night. They said around 5:58 every morning for the next hour and a half is chaos in our house. And I was thinking, but how? In my mind, like, it's nothing but little kids here. So I spent the night, and true to form, I woke up at 6 a.m. to hearing the preschooler and the toddler screaming. And I was thinking, what's going on? I guess they needed Otis's parenting class, right? But it was this notion of the disorganization of the children's needs not being met, them calling mommy and daddy, and they had created this rhythm that this happened every day. So I kind of just watched and didn't offer up anything. And then me and the adults went out to lunch, and I said, here's what I would do. I gave them the resources and said, no, you, because they were saying, well, you come do it. They're your godchildren, you show them. I said, no, I'm not here every day. You show them, put it on the door, teach them, you know, what you think is important. You can take a picture of him and put it up there. We get the Velcro, the whole thing they were provided with. They taught it to them and immediately saw that it worked. The visual picture schedule, all right? So we've got to decide what we want to display in the schedule. What do we want to display? For them, it was the morning routine. For some of you, it may be coming home from school. For some of you, you may be teaching in the classroom, so it may be the whole day around when we have to stop and start. We often think when we start the schedule in the beginning of the year, most people by January aren't teaching to it anymore because they say the children know what to do. And we forget that it helps them to understand what's next, and it helps them to create organization and predictability in their minds. So once you decide on where you want to hang your schedule and where you want to post in your schedule, we need to just make sure it's large enough. So in this next video, where you see Michelle in San Francisco, teaching to her picture schedule, which is behind her on the wall. And this is a toddler classroom. This is a toddler classroom that she's using this picture schedule.
Where's Lori gonna sit? Lori, do go push up your napkin. Let's see. Oh, where should Oliver sit? And then how about Edie? What should Edie sit? Ainsley, do you want to help me too? Oh, Willie, where should Willie sit? And I think Ethan will come later, but why don't we find a seat for Ethan? And how about Alexander? Finnegan, you want to help us too? Oh, do you want to put down your circle? Where do you want to sit?
I want to sit in the green grass.
Oh, that's perfect, on the green grass. And then I think Evie will be here later. Do you want to put down Evie's?
Yeah.
And can you help me put Spencer's down, Eva? Evie, so you put Solvay's down for me? And here's Ava's. Edie, do we put Edie's down? This one's fine. Yeah, right there. So we don't need these. Adam's not here yet, and we're not sure if he's gonna be here yet, so we'll leave it there. Actually, maybe we'll put it out just in case he doesn't. Lawrence is next to you.
Guys, what time is it?
All right. What time is it? You guys have Stephanie ask a question? Where's Lou? You guys, what time is it? Oh, where's our now hand? It's that circle time. That's right. But is this right? Do we have snack time after circle? No. What time? Project time. Do my friends see a picture of project time? Which one? Can you come up and show me more? This one. Oh, so we're gonna move this over, okay? Yeah. So this is circle time. You're over here. Where are you? Oh, that's right. You're right here in the project time picture. And what's after project time? Outside time. Is our outside time picture here? gonna put our lunchtime picture right there. Do you think my friends know it's time for circle? Should we sing our Make a Circle song? Are you guys gonna help me sing? Should we pat our knees today or should we pat our elbows? Or shoulders? Shoulders? Okay, if you want, you can pat your head too. So let's do, I'm gonna do my knees and my shoulders. Okay, ready? Make a circle, big and round, big and round. Find yourself a seat, and sit down on the green grass. Lulu, did you find your circle? You want to use this yellow circle? Yeah, I think we'll take it back. All right, and then should we sing good morning to our friends? All right, let's start. We can wave to our friends today when we sing good morning, all right? You ready? Good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Good morning, everybody. We're so glad to see you. Good morning to Solveig, to Maud and Miles. Good morning to Ainsley, to Finnegan and Ava. Good morning to Sophie, to Lulu and Alex. Good morning to Edie, to Kai and to Oliver. Good morning to Lauren, to Spencer and Willie. Good morning to Sahaj. We're so glad to see you. All right. Are you ready for some stories? Yeah, all right. So my friends are asking for Pete the Cat. Are you guys ready for Pete the Cat? Yeah!
This next strategy around social communication is what we call sing to me. We use familiar songs and familiar rhymes and music to communicate for children who enjoy it. We know that many children on the spectrum will sing, but they won't be open to communication or conversing with you. So singing is an entry point. We want to choose songs that are simple and that repeat themselves and that use familiar tunes. We want to sing songs about activities and things important to the children or the child and that they enjoy. Songs where we can stress key vocabulary words, and songs that we can put in the child's name wherever possible. Let me give you an example. This is a song to encourage eating. Woo, I remember my godson Elijah. If his carrots touched his chicken, it was over with. He wouldn't say anything. He would just literally get it from the table and go into a full-blown tantrum. And you had to figure out that it was because the carrots had touched the chicken. And he was a toddler, but if those carrots touched that chicken, he was going to have a hard day. So this one we can sing to Mary Had a Little Lamb. Mark is eating carrots now, eating carrots, eating carrots. Mark is eating carrots today. I am so glad. Mark's name is in there, that he's eating the carrots is in there. That's the important word that we want to stress. Simple, simple, simple. We can add complexity. We can add complexity. Song I used to sing to my toddlers. Way up high in the apple tree, the bright red apple smiled down at me. So first I had to teach them to ball up their fists like they're apples. And we would always do this before we ate apples or applesauce. They like to move. Way up high in the apple tree, the bright red apple smiled down at me. I wanted that apple from the apple tree. I shook and shook that apple tree. Down fell the red apples all over me. Then we would end it with, I picked that apple up. Good. Guarantee you sing that song with toddlers, they'll do anything you want them to do. Sing that song with toddlers, those toddlers will end the war in Europe. They love it. They love it. They love it. Sing that song to 12 toddlers and see what happens. They'll follow you anywhere. Introduce it to them. So this one is, we sing this one sometimes, the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Won't you come play with me? We'll have fun. Just wait and see. I'm messing the tune up. First, it's your turn. I can't think of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star no more. Then it's mine. We'll be friends all the time. Won't you come and play with me? We'll have fun. Just wait and see. And then there's this buildup. So the next song would be what? One where they're moving their whole bodies, where they're moving their whole bodies. Where's Stumpkin? Toddlers again. Where is Stumpkin? We don't know, we don't care. Where is Stumpkin becomes, where is Rupert? Where is Rupert? Where is Jamie? Where is Jamie? Where is Anna? You used to see those toddlers trying to move their fingers. It's their whole hand. Again, they'll do anything you want them to do. Say their name, change Stumpkin to those kids sitting with you, and they have to move their fingers, and then tell them to get up and move their whole body. Anytime we had to wait for the lunch to come, those were my go-tos. They would forget that they were hungry. The food would come and they would still be putting their fingers in my face, wanting to sing Thumpkin. Active engagement using children's names is a strategy that works for all children and children on the spectrum. That's right, Erica. Making it exciting, engaging, and about them, and about them. So this next strategy we call, what is it? What is it? The purpose here is to make the connection between the picture and the word. You're thinking about children on the spectrum. So because we use speech as a way to communicate, I often say, select 5 photos of things you want to use, and then we build up to 10. These photos need to clearly represent one specific item. You're going to select pictures that are functional, like this, the cup, the toothbrush, the toothpaste, the apple, the spoon, the bowl, things you want to teach them about, the paintbrush if it's in the classroom, the book, the chair, whatever it is that you want them to know that this is the chair, and we push it in, all right? So we start with the pictures of real objects. Then you're going to pick up the object, whatever it is, and give them the picture. Then you want to point to that picture and say the word. Point to the picture and say the word. So I would say cup, cup. Can you say cup? Can you reach for the cup? Hopefully they do it. If they don't, we keep what? Trying. We don't say, I did it and he wouldn't do it. I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with parents and teachers and they did it one time. And they said, I did it and he didn't do it. Well, you know, I had to take my drive-ins exam 3 times. Because the first time I passed the written test, but I did what? I moved the car after my dad got out. I was supposed to wait for the person. So the person got in and said, you failed. I was like, my heart just broke. Wait a minute. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to move the car. The second time, I was in California. I didn't know the speed limit here. I kept using Pennsylvania speed limits. I flunked the test. Sometimes it takes us what? More than one time, but we don't want to give young children the opportunities for repetition. It takes multiple opportunities. Some of you have seen me do this, where I have you take out your cell phone and I have you look at a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and I have you times that by 365 and you get a number. Those are the number of days that a 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-old have been alive. Then I pick a 27-year-old, a 42-year-old, a 55-year-old, and a 60-year-old, and I say times that times what? 365. Those are the number of days that they've been alive, right? What we do when we don't allow children repetition is we say, I've been alive for 20,000 days. You've been alive for 790 days, and I want you to do it and master it at the same rate that I have. It's just what? It's wrong. So we need to do these things over and over and over and over and over for young children to make the connections that we're wanting them to make. So this next strategy is another video called narrating language. So here Gail's narrating the language as a strategy for this toddler. as a strategy for this toddler.
It's going backwards. Up, it crashed, and the cow fell down. And the cow fell down because the train crashed. You want to get another one? You want to build another train?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like me to help?
Abigail.
Thank you, Abigail. Abigail is going to help us build our train.
Here.
Yes, teamwork. We have, thank you. And here we go. All aboard.
Excuse me, Maddie.
Excuse us, Madeline. We're coming through with our train. It's moving. Is it going forward or backwards? It's going backwards. Well, when it goes this way, it's going forward. Give it a little push. Can you make the train sound for me, Max? Can you make the train? What does the train say? What does the train say? Choo choo. Choo choo. What about the conductor? What does he say? All aboard.
All right, so what we saw Gail there do was skillfully narrate everything he was saying as a strategy. But that's not the only thing she's doing. She's what? A part of the play. She's on the floor. She's not standing up pointing, saying, Madeline, do this. Madeline said that, do this. She's right there with them. And as you notice, everything he says popped up on the screen, and everything that he says, she repeats. Did you hear that? Or she narrated what it was he wanted to do. Crucial, crucial strategy. Crucial, crucial strategy. We can do this for all children though, but our children on the spectrum, they need us to do this for them as a part of the teaching and the learning. So another strategy is this notion of puppet as a talking buddy. This encourages communication and it enhances make-believe play, which is oftentimes a struggle for young children on the spectrum. Because children on the spectrum oftentimes will talk to non-human objects and things, this is a way to create that bridge. So you want to introduce the puppet multiple times. Maybe you read a story about it. If it's let's say it's an owl, so you read a story about the owl family, and then you actually have the hand puppet. Then you stop reading the story after you've read it multiple times. You know, our friends at Emory, reading right from the start, they say that, you know, if you actually read a story, a picture book to a young child, they actually say you've got to read the book a minimum of 3 times, because each time you do something different. But this isn't a literacy training. But just think about that when you share it with your teachers, that you have to read it a minimum of 3 times before you want them to do more with it, because you're looking for 3 different things when they read it. Then you come back and you have this puppet voice that you use with the owl. The puppet starts to move. You smile for the puppet starts to talk about things that happened in the story or maybe in the classroom. But then you're going to notice and see, how is this child responding to this puppet? If this child responds to this game, I might add some more puppets and see how well the child responds to. Then I'm going to do this one thing. I'm going to say, you know what? Would you like to hold the puppet? Would you like the puppet today? If they want the puppet, I'm going to give them the puppet. Some children, that's going to be their process. Be prepared, because other children, the moment you lift the puppet up, they're going to reach for it and they're going to want it. So you need to have another puppet ready to what? Offer them. So what we can't do is show up with the puppet and then say, wait, it's not your turn. It's going to fall apart. If they're interested in a puppet, you need to have another puppet to offer them that puppet. Really, really important for children on the spectrum, because they're showing interest and we want to move within that interest. But you may have a child who's really reserved and isn't interested in the puppet at all and says no. Then we put it away and then we try again another day. Puppet as a talking buddy when we think of social communication. Here's my favorite. Helping children learn to say yes and learn to say no. Learning to say yes and learning to say no. It's important to say yes and to say no because it's powerful for young children. You all know that saying no is quite powerful. They say no when they want to say yes, and these are typically developing children. But it lets other people know what I want them to know. If I can say yes or no. And if I can say yes or no, and you understand me, then that reduces what? The likelihood that I'm going to have a meltdown and a tantrum. So our job is to think about, who is this child that I'm considering? And when are the times that they can say yes or no, based on the context and conditions of this family childcare home? I'm their caregiver in their home, in their preschool, early Head Start or Head Start space. Do it in a playful learning way though, not in a really structured way, where you're going to say, we're going to play a game about saying yes or no. I'm going to ask you some things and you're going to say yes or no. You're going to hold up things that are familiar to them. You're going to say, is this a book? Yes or no? Oh, they should say yes. Is this a spoon? Yes or no? Then I might hold up a fork and I'm going to say, is this a plate? They're going to say no. So they need opportunities to say yes or no. You determine what those items are in that environment that they're familiar with, giving them practice to say yes or no. But always what? Not doing it really fast like I just did, but doing it slowly, giving them opportunities to respond. Because most children won't respond right away, particularly children on the spectrum. They need some more wait time, okay? As they learn and get better at it, we shift from those objects to things about themselves, around their likes and dislikes, their yeses and their nos, as a way to find out more about them, but to actually get them to communicate so that they can say yes or no and not do what Malik did in the block area or Fernando did and push the other kids away, but to do what? Say, no, I don't want to play. I'm playing by myself, which is a different type of response. So this notion of teaching children the ability to say yes or no, it's another one that we skip over, but it's crucial for our little friends on the spectrum to be able to say yes or no as an entry point to social communication. How many of you ever, the people that I can see, there are 5 pages of people here, but just by show of hands in the chat, flood the chat. How many of you, yes or no, have ever taught children to say yes or no in a structured, playful way in your family childcare, in your home as a parent, that you really thought about it? You didn't just tell them, say no or say yes, but you gave them multiple opportunities to say yes or no. Okay, Mitzi says no. We got some yeses, some nos. Mercedes is no. And Helica says yes. Andrea said, I never thought about it. Teresa says no. Jessica says yes. All right. What about the rest of you? Keep coming. There are 104 people here. Otis says no. Ariana says no. Maria says yes to say no, thank you, using manners. Right. That's one of them too, to say thank you. I didn't include that one here, Maria. Shaying says give choices, but not yes or no. Shanika says yes. Rosa says no. Okay, so many of you saying, hey, Alana, look at Alana. She done showed up. Where you done fell from? Ain't seen you in a month of Sundays. They got you working over there hard with them early Head Start providers. More on that later. Good to see you, Alana. Virginia says, teaching them yes and no builds advocacy for themselves. It definitely does. Erica says, great to practice yes and no for safety reasons too. That's one of our videos, Erica. So hopefully it plays. Liz says, I'm afraid I have to, oh, she's got to leave. Okay. Yes, for the personal boundaries. Don't want to misuse it. That's right. That's right. So there's another great article that's in your handout around young children with ASD and social communication. So we just covered some strategies for social communication, but this article is another one to read. So if you feel like your teachers, if you think of the 3 traits, need more on the social communication, this might be a great deeper dive or article to read together and share and talk about strategies they could use, or as a thinking launch pad for them to do more around social communication with young children. So our third trait here around social behaviors around the universal trait. It's our third trait. So I want to introduce you all to a strategy called HOMES. So HOMES stands for hands-on, open-ended, meaningful, engaging, and sensory-oriented. So I'm gonna guide you through it in the next couple of slides with some videos, fingers crossed that these videos play, because there's some great strategies embedded here around behavior. So this notion of hands-on, we've got to ask ourselves, are children interacting with real materials or the fake materials? So the story I like to share is, I was where Alana used to work, as the coach one time in Emeryville, California. And the teacher was in the room with the kids, and she had that fake snow from Lakeshore, and she had the bowl in front of her. I'm from Philadelphia, so I'm like rolling my eyes at fake snow, like this ain't it at all. Like I'm a grown man and I'm not excited. The fire truck pulled up. So like 6 of the kids got up and was like, fire truck. So I'm smiling because I'm thinking, yes, go to the fire truck. And they could see the fire truck. And it wasn't a fire. They kind of just pulled up outside. I don't really know why. So I got up with them. So she's trying to call them back, telling the other teacher to go get them. But mind you, she has this bowl that only she can touch and feel. So for these children who are in California, where it does not snow in this part of California, many of them had never experienced snow. It is so removed from them. Not that they can't experience it, but it was so removed from them because it wasn't real. What was real was the fire truck. So I kind of just opened the door. And before I knew it, like 9 kids went outside. I kind of smiled at the teacher and went outside. I knew she wasn't going to say anything to me. Before I knew it, the other teacher came out, the other kids were out. And we were at the fence. And the fireman kind of saw the kids saying, fireman, fireman, fireman. And he said, you want to get on the truck and blow the horn? And of course they said, yeah. He said, well, 2 at a time, 2 at a time. We walked around, they all got on. That fake snow went out the window. That fire truck was real, it was hands-on. They got to beat the horn, they got to see the firemen, they got to see the truck. They were amazed by it. They had a really good time. That was real curriculum that you could have taken back and done more with. It involved them doing something. It was in the moment, but it was real. Hands-on. Is it hands-on or is it listening to the teacher say things? So another strategy that many of you are familiar with, but probably have never seen used, is what we call first then. So hopefully this video of Diana, who at the time worked for Google's child development program. So I was down there with them for a little bit, offering some help. So I'm taking a deep breath in hopes that the video plays. But again, if it doesn't play, Leah and I will strategize and get you all the ability to view these videos. So
hey, Shawn.
Diana, who's the lead teacher. Leah?
Yeah, sorry. We had a suggestion from somebody who said that, I'm not sure if you have optimizing video selected, but you could unselect it if it is selected, or maybe see.
I did not select that, Leah.
Okay.
Because I'm using the Wi-Fi. I'm not hooked into the Ethernet the way I am when I'm home. I'm not at my house. So I use the Wi-Fi because it's easier than when I'm using the Ethernet. So
okay.
Yeah. I'll try though. I'll press the video and see what happens. So you're going to see Diana, who's the teacher. He just came to school, so she's going over the first then schedule with him, and then you're going to see the special ed teacher comes in, and she uses what we call a high interest item to get him to do what she wants. Don't pay attention to her. I want you to pay attention to Diana.
What do next? And put it in. Put it right here and we go to the bathroom. I see one right here. You ready? Right here. It goes here. First, wash hands, then snack. Can you help teacher Zapata, please? Not ready? Say not ready. Not ready. Ryan.
Okay.
I love bananas.
Show Shawn how you put here. What we do next. Okay, ready? Just one more time. Then you can help me put it right here. Snap.
Ryan, look what I have. Look. You want to hold it? Come on, let's go wash hands.
There you go. Thank you, Brian, for putting what we're going to do next. Okay.
Let's go wash hands.
So what you saw was Diana was really patient. She was calm around the first then. And if he wasn't ready, she wanted him to use his language to say not ready. At the end, something else happened. That was a coaching conversation because we call that splitting. She showed up and pulled the toy off the shelf. Diana knew that toy would have motivated him. So the special ed teacher just used it to get him to wash his hands, and we saw what he did. He put it on there now, and he got up because he knew, I'm not so focused on the snack. I want my favorite toy to play with, which necessarily isn't good for two adults who share space to not be aligned. We would have wanted her to support what Diana was doing and wanting to get Brian to do the first thing, wash hands, then get snack, because he went over to the snack table and wanted to get snack, but he hadn't washed his hands. So this individual schedule of first then was, first we wash our hands, then we get snack. First we wash our hands, then we get snack. And he wasn't, he was rejecting that until he got the toy. But that's what the first in schedule could look like and how teachers implement it in a variety of ways. The next part of the home strategy is open-ended, to ask ourselves, does this activity allow children to explore? And are there predetermined outcomes, or are the outcomes determined by the child or children? It's really important, really important. So I skipped the slide that I'm gonna come back to. The next one is meaningful. Is this meaningful to children in terms of their experience? And are the young children experiencing joy and satisfaction? Does this child on the spectrum experience some satisfaction and joy in this experience that the adult is oftentimes put in front of them? A big one for me, this notion of engagement. When we look at engagement, we tend to see engagement as one way. There's this great woman in Australia who's researching engagement and the levels of engagement. And what she's really saying is we misunderstand it because there are levels to it. And the children who we think are engaged and the children who we think aren't, they're all engaged at different levels. But this notion of engagement is helping children with ASD think and think differently about what they're doing, what they're engaging in, with adult needed support. And then the S is that it's sensory oriented, which is a big one. Yeah, I didn't cover that in this one because we looked at the 3 traits in the 2 hours, but this is a whole nother one around strategies that are sensory oriented strategies for children on the spectrum. All right, I skipped 2 videos because I'm paying attention to the time. So there are 2 other handouts from Brooks Publishing that I shared. They're tips and hints for self-regulation. And these are for those of you on the call who work with parents and families, because I know a lot of you are family workers or you're counselors and you work directly with families. So the 5 ones on this tip sheet are to support self-regulation. And then this other sheet looks at those routine times, bath time, meal times, dressing, transitions like morning and dressing, and tips for children on the spectrum around practicing eye contact with their main caregivers who are their parents and families. So those 2 are for parents and families because they target being at home. And then there are 3 others that are really great that come from this huge book that I loaned to somebody, and I can't remember who I loaned it to. It's called More Than Words. But I had 3 of the pieces from it that I wanted to share. So this first one looks at knowing the stages of communication. And if you look down, when children have their own agenda, they're learning to be requesters, they're partnering and communicating and understanding children on the spectrum as they go through these stages. And this is for parents and families and teachers and providers. The other one that I was going to include here, but I felt myself running out of time, is the ROC strategy that the Handouts Center up in Canada uses in terms of daily routines to support young children. So the handout is here so that you can learn about the ROC strategy. Again, great for supporting parents and families. For those of you who support them, you may want to introduce this in some of your work, not just as a handout, but as this framework that you talk about and get their feedback and negotiate with them on, or even with childcare providers also. The third one is around adapting daily routines for those stages of communication. So just 3 handouts that I think are really resourceful and that you'll gain a great deal from by looking through them. So the 2 videos that I skipped that I'm gonna come back to now. So one video that I skipped, I think it's a really good book. It's called All My Stripes. And this is specifically about a young child on the autism spectrum. This book, you can order it, is from Imagination Press, which is a component of the American Psychological Association. The one here I found on YouTube, someone's reading it on YouTube.
All My Stripes. Zane ran home as fast as he could. Nobody gets me, Mama. Mama hugged Zane. He began to tell her about his bad day. This morning in art class, the teacher started a hoof painting project. I didn't want to get paint on my hooves, so the teacher gave me a paintbrush. All the other zebras noticed and were making fun of me because they didn't understand why I wouldn't use my hooves. Mama said, "I bet that made you feel different from the rest of the group." Zane replied, "It did, but paint is just too weird to touch." During math class, the fire alarm blared loudly. While the children in my class were getting in line quietly, I hid under the desk, screaming and covering my ears. The class left without me, and I was scared until the firefighters found me. When the class came back from lunch, everyone was putting their lunch boxes in their cubbies. Some classmates were talking about a video game I play all the time, but I didn't know how to start talking to them. I started talking about all the things I knew about the game, but since I was staring at the floor, nobody knew I was talking to them. When the other kids walked away, I started talking louder. I really wanted them to hear me, but everybody was getting ready for science class. We sat down for science and were learning about the planets. Our teacher gave us each a planet to draw, but I wanted to create my own. When it came time to present, I felt different from the rest of the class again. My teacher loved my planet and said, "Whatever floats your boat." I spent the rest of the afternoon looking for a boat in the classroom. Zane was crying. How come all anyone sees is my autism stripe? Mama carried Zane over to the mirror. When I look at you, I see many different stripes. If one of them were missing, you wouldn't be the same. I see your pilot stripe. When we get lost in the city, you always remember the way home. Your caring stripe makes you act kindly toward others. When your classmates think it's funny to bully other kids, you come to the rescue. Your honesty stripe lets me always trust your word. When other parents have to worry that their kids aren't telling the truth, I know you always are. My favorite stripe is your curiosity stripe. When all the other kids are falling asleep in class, you always want to know more. I love when you come home and tell me everything you learned. Sometimes you ask me questions and I don't even know the answers. Mama pointed out the rest of Zane's amazing stripes. The more stripes she explained, the better Zane began to feel about himself. By the time she was finished, Zane loved himself again. Zane ran outside, feeling the warmth of the sun. Finally, he felt proud of all of his stripes. He said, "There's more to me than just my autism stripe. It's just part of me. The other parts make the whole me. I love each stripe because without them, I wouldn't be me."
But the video that I want to show, and hopefully it shows, is this safe for play, kind of as the next stage of yes and no. So here we see Rebecca and her 24 Head Start children in Marin City, California, and she's teaching them, is it safe for play, yes or no? This is a great way to help children with ASD and all children distinguish these pieces. So fingers crossed that this one works, because I think it's a great resource to see in action.
Let's see if he can put it in the, is it safe for play?
No. No.
Raji, can you play with these? Is it safe for play, or should you keep away?
Keep away.
Keep away. Raji, put it in here and keep away. Put it right in there. Here comes our next one. Let's see if Jenna can do this one. What do you think, Jenna?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it safe for play, or should we keep away?
Play. Away.
Keep away from the salad?
No.
Or we can eat the salad. Can we touch it?
No, we can only eat it.
We only eat it. We don't play with it, but we just eat it. So Jenna, here you go. This is safe for us. Do you think it's safe?
Yes.
Say yes.
Yes.
Say yes. So she can put it in the safe for play. Here comes the next thing. Woo! Everybody say hot, hot coffee. Jamal, what do you think about hot coffee? Do we play with hot coffee?
No.
Keep away.
No.
All right. Here comes the next one.
Clown.
Everybody say what the name of these are.
Clown.
Oh, you really know it, Janila. Let's see if Janila knows. Is it safe for play or keep away? Wow. Uh-oh.
Keep away.
Uh-oh. Esther, are you allowed to play with the stove?
No.
Let's see if she says it's safe for play or keep away. What do you think, Esther? She's really thinking. We're giving her a moment to think about, should she play with the stove and touch the oven?
Keep away.
So Esther, will you put it?
Keep away.
Let's see if she knows. Oh, Shawn is helping you.
When I touch the stove, I said,
Woo! Woo! That's right. We don't touch the stove. Here comes our next one.
Bella, you can.
Oh, slippers! Ballet slippers! Kayla, what do you think? Is it safe for play or should we keep away? Put here.
What is my keep away?
Kayla says you can put that on your feet. You can play with those, she said. Jihan, what do you think? Should we keep away from the toothbrush? Or,
No.
Or is it safe to use?
Safe away.
Oh, you guys give Gianna thumbs up. Okay, one more. What in the world is this?
It's for your hair. Please lay your hair. Mommy.
Everybody do your hair like this. Whose mommy has a curling iron?
I do.
Oh my,
Me.
whoa, wait a minute. Is this
Me.
hot?
Yeah.
Oh, can we play with with the curling iron? Joshua, is it safe for play?
No, keep
Oh,
away.
everybody say keep away. Bryony. Oh, you guys, do you see the steam? Wait a minute. Do we take a bath?
No.
Everybody takes a bath, right?
Away.
But wait a minute, if the water is so hot that it's making all that steam, can we get in the water that's so hot? Can we? No, wait, put it in. Keep away. Oh, you guys, pat your head right here. Look at your son. Yes.
When I was in the bathtub, the water was really hot.
Was it so hot that it burns you?
Yeah, my grandma did that to me.
And then you have to say, Grandma, we have to cool it down. Right, keep away. Good, you told your mom.
My dad did it.
Boys and girls, you guys have really learned what to keep away with and what is safe for play.
But my bath was hot but not steaming.
Yeah, it was hot but not steaming. That's the way you do it.
Hot and steaming.
Hot but not steaming. Because if it's steaming, keep away. But if it's just a hot bath, then we can play in the bath. But if it's steaming, keep away. Hey, boys and girls, can you guys all give me a shake like this? Shake, Mama, show me shake. Shake, shake. Shake your hands up high. Shake your hands down low. Shake your hands up high. Shake your hands up low. We are going to learn a new song today. So what I would like you to do is come into this ocean so you can see the song words. Thanks, Kamari, for your help. Oh, you guys are so great at following directions. I asked you to come into the ocean and you came right over. Thank you. Can you push play on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen? We're going to learn. Oh! And then turn the volume up.
So I see a lot of the comments in the chat. So I wanted to show you this so that you just see how this structure could look like. This is one way. You may adapt it and do something different. And there's some other things that hopefully you picked up on that Rebecca was using. And there's some things you don't know. Out of these 24 children, 11 different languages were spoken in that classroom. When I showed up in September, I was thinking, girl, how are you gonna do this? Most of these kids can't understand you. This was literally March of the following year. And we see everybody's engaging and interacting, but you don't hear her saying, sit back, do this, do that. You see this constant engagement. You hear her using this strategy. She's calling everybody's name. Do you hear that? That's intentional. She's using their names. That's an intentional strategy for children on the spectrum. You all can't tell that 7 of these children have IEPs in this Head Start classroom. You all can't tell that. You can't tell because of the facilitation and the way the routine happens every day. They know what to expect, which is why she can do this safe for play. And you hear some children making mistakes. Did you hear that? At one point, it was safe for play and somebody said no, because they're learning. So I might know that my mother uses that curling iron to curl her hair and that it's hot. Somebody else may say, I have no idea what that is. So I might say it's safe to play. They're learning. So this whole piece of this happens multiple times and we keep adding things that are safe for us and not safe for us, safe for us and not safe for us, to support young children with ASD and all children in a meaningful, engaged way. And here on top of that, they're learning a second, or a few of them are learning a third language in this Head Start context. All right, which was the goal of all the activities. And just in closing, just want us to remember that families are at home working, not working from home, and that the demands and requests we make on them, we need to be mindful that this is still an unusual time for everybody, particularly families with young children. And we need to offer them some grace in a different way around policies and expectations. I thank you for your time and attention today. And of course, hope that you decide to connect. And in closing, we like to end this way in the chat. One takeaway from today and how you plan to integrate autism strategies into your parenting, teaching, or work with children and families. One takeaway from today in the chat and how you plan to integrate autism strategies into your parenting, teaching, or work with young children and families. Elizabeth says, use more pictures. All right, that's a strategy. Maria said, slowing my speech. Consistency is key in organization, Antoinette says. Teaching yes or no, someone says. Leah said, kids love to hear their name in the song. And Leah has 2 young daughters, so she definitely knows. Mitzi says, teaching yes or no. Jamie says, give time for process to come organically. Ariana says, the reminder that inclusion strategies support our children. Yes, they do. Hey, Carrie, I didn't know that was you. She said, observation is the greatest tool. Mercedes said, learning to say yes or no. Andrea says, going to teach saying yes or no. All right. Virginia says, better understanding and use more pictures and watch, wait, and listen. Yes, that wait time is really crucial for our friends with ASD. All right, Otis, thank you for coming through. He said, more observation. Cheyenne says, singing and using movement. Yeah. Aretha says, use with my nephew in many areas. Awesome. So Hart says, really enjoyed the visual strategies. Awesome, awesome. Anna says, lots of ways to empower the children and giving them a voice. Great seeing you, Anna. Haven't seen you in a while. Savitha says, going to observe more. And this observation piece serves multiple purposes. If you hone in on your observation and you need to make a referral, because the diagnosis it takes a lot of feedback in that your ongoing observations, particularly if they're written, and that documentation could be supportive in terms of helping. Tressa says, I will use the yes, no, and safe for play strategies. Rosa says, new strategies and a lot of things to implement into the groups. Rayanne says, I like the yes or no, and is it safe to play games? Lots of people are saying yes or no. Cynthia, thank you. Awesome, thank you for that. Shanice, takeaway, not othering them, but helping them belong. Definitely. Renuka says, yes or no, first and then, safe and unsafe. Hi, Vina. Slow down, yes and no support. Less visuals for daily routine. Never underestimate children. That's right, Kim. Anna says, working with adults, letting them know they are enough. There you go, Anna. That's right, because they're going to say, this is too much. These kids with autism, I don't know what to do. What? We do know what to do. Intentional teaching, Daisy. Getting specific, safe to play. Mercedes says the what to do, problem solving. Awesome, awesome. Thank you all for sharing these 2 hours with us. And in closing, I know you all have to go. You're going to get the evaluation link from Leah at First 5. We need you to complete that evaluation because if you don't complete it, they won't pay me. And I got to get paid because I got people in my house that I got to feed and help. And I need to get paid, and they won't pay me if only 2 people fill out the evaluation. So please help me by filling out your evaluation. When you get the link from Leah, they look to those evaluations. They take the feedback seriously, and it helps them to plan. So if there are other trainings that you all want, put them in there. Next month, I'll be doing trauma responsive family engagement based on the book that I co-authored. So really exciting around how we understand responsive, being responsive in terms of trauma and what that really, really means. And then the following month in June, we're gonna be doing executive function strategies. I'm really excited about that one. We're gonna turn some things on its head because that's a big $20 word. But we're gonna look at how does this really happen around working memory, inhibitory control, and cognitive flexibility. So I hope you all are able to come and join because I'll be facilitating those 2 in May and in June. So take really good care, stay safe, and I hope to see you all really soon.